Hey nerds. So, quite a few people have DM'd this video to me, posted it in a bunch of different places. Sorry, Micah, but it is being posted in a bunch of different places and being discussed, and some people are upset about it, and others, I guess, don't really care. I was in the boat that once I heard that I was brought up in the video, that I kind of wanted to do something funny with it. Do a meme, be silly, be a troll. And especially in regards to the content and the context of this video, I realized that that probably wouldn't be the best thing to do. Someone would be mad at me somewhere, whether or not it was ArenaNet or someone who just took it the wrong way, didn't realize it was a joke, or even Micah himself thinking that I was just picking on him, which wasn't the case. So I am actually checking out this video. I do know that it's 40 minutes long, which I think is too long for a rant, and I do know the gist. I've listened to it a little bit. So I'm going to give you guys about the first 10 minutes and my thoughts and some experiences that I've had just with MMOs in general, because I believe that what he's speaking about isn't necessarily something that's only in Guild Wars 2. I think it's everywhere. It depends on your experiences, and it depends on how comfortable you are as a person socially, honestly, in different features of different games. So I'm going to let this play a little bit and give you guys some feedback, and if you like the content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, and I will also have the link to Micah's video as well. So,
a little bit about Guild Wars 2 and specifically about the online community that surrounds Guild Wars 2. And even more specifically than that, I want to talk about how toxic this online community is. And right off the bat, I'm sure that there are some of you who are kind of raising their eyes going, now, wait a second. I think Guild Wars 2 is the most friendly community in all of MMOs. And I don't want to.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that probably for certain game modes, there are people who are a lot more serious about the game, including PvP and World v World. And I actually have had instances, especially in chat, and it's not a bad thing, where I'd never had people complain so much and argue with each other in chat that has nothing to do with me, not arguing with me, but arguing with each other about builds and the validity of builds. And I found that pretty incredible, especially with how vast of choices that you have in this game, and so many different ways that you can play your character. I found that really exciting. And the other thing that I will mention is I think it's funny that I chose to wear my glasses for this, and so now you have like dual reflection of light off of my glasses and Micah's glasses, so there's that too.
Completely discount that point. There are aspects of the Guild Wars 2 community that I believe are certainly some of the most friendly communities that I have been in, but I absolutely do not think that Guild Wars 2 somehow has the friendliest community in the MMO space. In fact, I think it is far from it. I have seen some of the most toxic behaviors and patterns coming from the Guild Wars 2 online community, more so than I've seen in any.
I think that's the key word here that a lot of people are missing. I think it's online. You've met the most toxic people online because of the anonymity that they have, so they don't have to worry when they, berate you or things like that. And I will go into saying that it's not Guild Wars 2. It's online gaming, being online as a whole, and just something that you can relate to this a little bit is with my being a female creator, and I absolutely despise saying things like this, because I like to think that a lot of my success has been because of my, points of interest or my skill with something or the way I speak or my personality or whatever. And there have been multiple times where obviously I've been berated just for being a female playing a game, or, some of the things that people will just say in any kind of space, just being a troll to be a troll. But there have also been people that I've won over that were like that, especially in Twitch chat, where they'll just come in and be like, people only watch you because you have big boobs, or you know, people only care because you're hot and everything's given to people who are hot. And then I'll just sit there and discuss it and kind of banter along with them. And it'll end up being that they end up following me and we might even become good friends. And I think it all depends on the response that you give to people, and whether or not you are willing to tolerate certain things and the level of toleration that you have for certain people. But I see it a lot more as a content creator. I think it just content creation and people that act that way go hand in hand. I'm not going to tell you to take it with a grain of salt, but because I feel like it's something that you shouldn't have to do. But it does come with the territory. Being a female content creator is even worse, I think. But I like to pick on things and troll them back, so it doesn't affect me as much. But I can see where he's coming from. But again, the word is online. It's not Guild Wars 2. It's not community. It's online. And I even saw this with a previous game that I had talked about, thinking that it would be cathartic and would make me feel better, and it didn't. So I don't even know how this experience with creating this video has made Micah feel.
The other MMO that I have ever played, and that's not an exaggeration. It might be anecdotal because it's my experience, but it is what I've observed, and I don't think it is just me. I don't think I'm alone when I say that. And so in order to kind of continue with this discussion, I want to first provide some clarity on who it is that I'm referring to, because obviously it seems bizarre that there can be this kind of conundrum where some people are saying it's the friendliest gaming community, and then myself and many others are kind of saying that it's one of the most toxic communities that I've ever seen. But there's actually, in my opinion, kind of three categories of players in the Guild Wars 2 community. And the first category of players is they are not the people who I'm referring to when I talk about it being toxic, and I'm going to define them here in a moment. But the second two are, and I believe the second two make up the majority of the player base in Guild Wars 2, and that is where the problem lies. Also want to briefly mention that when I say the online community, I'm not just talking about the players who are online in the game. Specifically, what I am talking about are the online players who are outside of the game.
The internet. You're talking about the internet. And yes, we get it. And yeah, there are instances that other people have had different experiences. And I think that's what a lot of it boils down to, is some people have had experiences with shitty people and some people have had experiences with great people. And that's why all of these opinions are formed about the community of a game, because they are all different opinions, because everybody has different experience. And in my honest opinion, especially like I said, after posting a video and talking about something like this that didn't make me feel better, it's just kind of taking a step back and realizing what you could have done better in a situation like that, or and fixing it, or realizing that it's the internet, people aren't going to change, and the one constant in every single altercation is you. So maybe you should find a different group of people to play with than the ones that you are currently playing with. And that's not a slight, it's fact.
So you're talking about YouTube, Reddit, the official forums, and everything else. I'm talking about not the players that you meet in the game alone, but the players that kind of talk about the game and represent the game outside of within the realm of Guild Wars 2. So the first category of players that I mentioned are what I call kind of the casual real life players. And casual is a bit of a subjective definition. What I'm talking about are basically.
So is toxic. I mean, it's the way that Guild Wars 2 is designed is so absolutely not catering, it's really enticing to people who would want to play in a casual level. And sometimes when that happens, it's people who, as actually mentioned later on in this video, that don't have time to do a lot of things, and so they want to get things done, and so they get more irritated and more antsy when they're not able to achieve the amount of content clears that they want to achieve. And so that's what some of that toxic behavior comes from. But the term toxic is also thrown around a lot, and if someone is actually giving you, you know, death threats and commenting on your YouTube with death threats and trying to dox you or DOS you or whatever, yeah, that's toxic. But someone in the game just saying something douchey isn't necessarily going to be taken as toxic by everyone, nor should it be. There are instances where I joke around with my friend group, not even necessarily in Guild Wars 2, just online. I used to do this in World of Warcraft, especially PvP, and Final Fantasy 14. You know, you have your group of people that are really fun with, and they understand the types of jokes that you make, and you understand the types of jokes that they make, and so you say douchey things like how you can't see them on the DPS meters, or, you know, how they keep standing in shit, and, like, you know, calling people shit. But it's not toxic. It's something that's more meant to be taken as humorous, and that's not everybody's bag. And I could also see how people on the outside of that little group might see content like that, especially if you're streaming or playing on YouTube or whatever, or a video, and say, wow, that's really toxic behavior. But it's not. It's very subjective, and I think that could also have an impact on the way this video was received, and that could also have an impact on Micah's opinion about the game and the community of the game. So
basically the players who play Guild Wars 2 on and off, they probably aren't hitting more than 20 hours a week. You know, it's not kind of a full-time job. Ultimately, these are the people who have a life outside of the video game world. These are the fathers who go to work and come home and play Guild Wars 2, the mothers who maybe hop on with their husband or with their kids or something, play a little bit, and that's kind of their way of bonding and having a good time. Or maybe the teenager who is in high school or maybe even in college, and they don't really have time to play the game a ton, but they really like it. They really enjoy it. It might be the only game that they play, or at least the MMO, the only MMO that they play, but it's not something that they are just super, super invested in. These are basically normal people who play the game, but it's not their life. It's not something that they find their identity in. And probably one of the most wholesome communities that I have been in Guild Wars 2 was the Facebook group. That's probably one of the most wholesome communities that I've ever been in, one of the kindest communities that I've ever been in. And they
that, I will say, is, from my experience, absolutely true. The Facebook group is great. I could promote them over and over again, but not even just for Guild Wars 2. The Facebook group for 14 is really incredible as well. There's a couple of them, and there's a couple for Guild Wars 2. There's Guild Wars 2 and expansions. There's just Guild Wars 2. I actually know one of the people that manages it. And for 14, there's 14. There's 14 for casuals. There's 14 Endwalker. I could go on for other MMOs, but I feel like the Facebook groups for all of those and the admins that they have are top notch. So if I could plug anything with this video, that would definitely be something that I really seriously agree with and think that everyone should check out.
do represent Guild Wars 2, but what I have found in that community is that it's predominantly made up of this category, kind of the casual real life players. These are just real people who enjoy playing Guild Wars 2 enough to kind of bond together and hang out with other people. I've seen people on that page who have shared videos of them playing with their daughter, with their wife, you know, introducing people to the game, and it's just altogether a great community. And I want to be very clear here. I am not talking about these people when I say the most toxic community. These people are the exception, not the rule. All right, so let's talk about the other two categories. So,
But again, like I said, there are a lot of casual people who only have a certain amount of time to get things done during the week and can be just as rude as other people. So I wouldn't even say to leave people like that out. And I feel like once, as we go through the video, again, I'm not going to play the whole thing because it is 40 minutes long and I've been putting in my 2 cents. It's almost contradictory of what's said next about the next two groups of people. There is definitely more smack talk and shit talking in other features of the game, but it's not just people whose whole lives are the game. That, and specifically with MMOs, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but people are very tribal of their MMOs. It's kind of like one of the things that I did recently was I am playing 14 and Guild Wars 2, and it's not something that happens all the time, but I do have people try to snub me or be rude or whatever just because I'm not playing one game versus the other, or because I say I might like one feature in one game versus the other. And I actually had one comment that was talking about my hair and my split ends, as if that was the focal point of the video, because he was upset at the time that I wasn't doing enough or putting out enough 14 content. It's people are very tribal about their games. And again, that's something that's just an online clicky thing. It doesn't mean that the community is bad. I understand what points he's trying to make so far. I do. And again, I've felt the same way before, but once I realized that it wasn't just the game and the community, you get past it a lot quicker, I guess.
So I'm going to call them cults and refer to them basically as kind of cult 1 and cult 2. And the reason I'm going to do that is because the mentality that these players have resembles a cult. I'm not trying to super exaggerate or play it up way more than it should.
I don't think it's that bad. I think that's also a term that's thrown around quite a bit. I would say a clique, or their beliefs are niche beliefs. I wouldn't call them cults, especially because when you're doing a video like this and you're trying to get your point across and be serious while also sounding professional and not ruining your career in content creation, a cult is a very strong word. Again, I understand where he's going, but you know.
Be, but these players think like people who are in a cult, and they treat others how people in a cult treat people outside of the cult. So, what am I talking about here? Well, the first sort of cult, and you've probably encountered these people before. The more that I talk, the more I think you're going to relate to this. The first cult are the people who essentially mindlessly praise ArenaNet. And I'm sure you have met this person anytime that you have had the misfortune of bringing up something that you think Guild Wars 2 could improve on, something you think ArenaNet could do better at. These people jump down your throat and they get upset because all they want to do is praise ArenaNet. And by the way, I'm going to break these down more in just a moment. Right now, I'm just kind of giving a brief overview. Then we're
I don't think they need to be broken down more, honestly. I think that there are people that provide a lot of constructive criticism for the game, and there are a lot of whiny baby complainers. But again, it's not just for Guild Wars 2. And if you're going to state something that you think should be fixed with a game, whether it's in a YouTube video or in chat or on Reddit, why the fuck do you care what other people have to say about it? So they don't like your idea. I mean,
we're going to talk about it a little bit deeper, but that is the cult 1. So then there is kind of the cult 2, or the other cult in Guild Wars 2. There's 2 of them. And the second one are the people who mindlessly bash ArenaNet in Guild Wars 2. And you've probably encountered these people as well. You've probably pointed out at some point that, Guild Wars 2, man, it's a really great game. It does X, Y, and Z really well. And then immediately, just kind of out of the shadows from behind the curtain, somebody just randomly appears to tell you how wrong you are and how stupid you are to think that. If anyone has ever had the misfortune of posting something on Reddit, you probably know exactly the kind of person that I'm talking.
I think people like that are hilarious. But again, it all just depends on what you've dealt with and the people in your life that you've dealt with and what you're okay with reading and what you're not okay with reading. And so when I come across people like that, I find it funny. And I also really like to debate. So I've gotten more and more used to just being like, okay, why do you think it's so? And just getting more and more sarcastic as I do, without actually being rude in such a way that would be almost unprofessional. Obviously, this is what I do for a living, so can't have that. But it's just, there's also another thing called positive toxicity. And what that is saying that there's absolutely nothing wrong with the game, praising the ground that directors and devs walk on. And when that happens, even if a lot of the criticism is actually, or a lot of the speech is actually good and the communication is good, and let's say a feature is good, the developers aren't getting any feedback from the community to actually make the game better. So it's kind of like, would you rather have too much positivity? Or would you have, you know, some jerk who is coming off as a jerk saying that they dislike every single thing and that a company could do better when they could do better? They could take these things into consideration. I would rather have my game grow and change based on that than just saying that everything is amazing and it's a great game and you should play my game.
Talking about. So again, we're going to come back to those more in a moment and talk about them a little bit more in depth. But before we do, I also want to mention that there are other people out there that don't fit into either of these categories. There's people who are kind of a mix, maybe more hardcore gamers, but they kind of just are loners. That's a little more how I was. I never really got into any particular community, but I was never really a super casual player. I always played the game quite a bit and tried to kind of get to the higher levels of the game, shall we say. So there are other people out there, but I do think that the majority of the player base falls into one of those three categories.
And that's where I think part of the mistake might be made. I think that, especially when you're playing an MMO, it's more fun and it's a better experience to play with other people. Now, that's not necessarily how everybody wants to play. A lot of people like to play alone together, or they just like to play an MMO solo and just do all of the PvE content or the open world content. But you're not really engaging in a group of friends that you would be able to hang out with every day. And if you did, that might make it so that you didn't necessarily come across the people that are sour. So.
Now, before we move on, I do want to mention the reason why I'm making this video, because it might seem kind of bizarre. Like, why are you talking about these categories? Why call it out? Like, why not just leave it alone? What's the point? And so I want to talk about that really quickly. So the reason I am making this video, number one, is because the experience that I've had when I've tried to get into the Guild Wars 2 community has been overwhelmingly negative, and I want to share.
That's unfortunate, and I would love to say that that is something that I could help out with and fix, and I would love to say that for everyone. I have an amazing group of people that love to teach, they love to raid lead, they love to help you out in every portion of the game, and they like to just talk with people. They hang out in Discord, they hang out in the Facebook groups, they're part of my Papega party, they're part of Hard Stuck, and a bunch of different people that just want to spread more knowledge about the game and stop the spread of misinformation. And I think it's really unfortunate to be so disheartened. And hopefully, maybe something will help, like a group of people or coming into contact with, one of these communities who is tight-knit but inclusive, and maybe fix it, maybe change it, because obviously I love Guild Wars 2 and I don't want anyone feeling this way about one of the games that I love. And he does go on to say later in the video and in the description that it is a big problem and something that ArenaNet needs to deal with. I don't necessarily think it's something that ArenaNet needs to deal with. There's only so much that you can do with terms of service, and there's only so much you can keep making addendums. 14, their terms of service, they do a great job trying to maintain that level of quality with in-game, but I think sometimes, and this is one of the things that I was talking about where I made the mistake of saying, this is how I feel about the community, before having myself grow and change and realize that it comes with content creation, it comes with all of these things, it comes with attention, it comes with success. And I've learned, which is why I'm here talking about this now, and just the way that their TOS is, because they try to address all of these issues, can sometimes make outside of the game a little bit worse, because there's more that you can talk about, more things that you can say that aren't against TOS outside of the game rather than inside of the game. And so, again, really, there's only so much that a company can do. And I don't necessarily think it's their responsibility to make it any better. One thing I will say is that there's a bunch of stuff that's been surfacing recently on Twitter that I do not condone. and I don't think you should just, have thicker skin, is picking on certain people in the community, in chat for PvP or World v World, I think it was. And I'm not going to talk about it very much in depth. But I think some people can just be shitty. And that's just the way it is. But it's not always so. It's just, it's more on the person than it is on anything else. And that's all you can really say. Hopefully it changes, especially if you guys know what I'm talking about with the circulation on Twitter about a couple of people. And there is evidence, too, if you look it up, so... but that's really the only thing I can actually say that I've seen. I haven't seen anything personally in-game that's been that bad, or that I didn't honestly think was just a joke. But we'll see what else he has to say about why he's making the video.
Share that experience, first off, just for the heck of it, because I think people will find it very interesting, but also because I know that I can't be alone. I know I'm not the only person who has had an overwhelmingly negative experience with the Guild Wars 2 community. So I want to make this video to kind of, I guess, show others that they are not alone, and to see if I can find other people who have had the same experience so that we can kind of band together and maybe enjoy that game together, maybe enjoy some other MMOs together. And then another reason I'm making the video is, I guess, just for the entertainment aspect. It's fun to talk about this kind of stuff, and it's a great way to kind of process it. And so I thought maybe you guys would be interested to listen. Also, I want to make it because there are probably people who are considering getting into Guild Wars 2, and I want you to be aware of what it is that you're getting into and kind of be aware of these different categories of players so that you can look out for the...
I think that people would be able to tell that. I think that people know that there are people like that in every game, and I don't necessarily think they need a warning. And if I was talking about a game that I loved to someone else and they said that they wanted to play it, I think the first thing I would talk about is doing things together and not trying to say that the community is negative. And again, for anyone who's had that experience, that's unfortunate. But there are places that you can go and groups that you can be a part of that aren't that way, and then choose to surround yourself with those people that are really great people. Again, if you want to get in touch with me, get in touch with Mighty Teapot. If you want to make a change, I guess is what I mean. Making a video that seems cathartic at the time isn't the way to make the change. And this is of no offense to Micah. I understand how it makes you feel once you actually put that content out there. But I feel like as a creator, it's hard. And there's a lot of pushback that you could possibly get that would be really unfortunate and could make you feel even worse. Or you could feel really, really good about it, but ruin the experience of the game for somebody else and or the development company that really had nothing to do with this issue that you're speaking of. And so if you really want to make a difference, as I was saying, surround yourself with good people and play a game that is what it is, a game that's meant to be played with people, and hang out and have fun and down content. Somebody acts like a jerk to you, block them, ignore them, I've done it. I think I've done it once, twice maybe for Guild Wars 2. I've done it a lot more for WoW, but it was mainly because people found out I was a chick. All in all, I don't think it's a bad video. I think that it is a little one-sided and a little biased, but obviously it's because this was probably fresh in his mind. But I don't think that the community in any game is honestly that bad. And you can say in the comments, EVE Online was so bad, World of Warcraft was so bad, this was so bad. Well, it all depends on who you play the game with. And again, I've talked about this situation just on YouTube and Reddit for another game, and then realized that my feelings about it were pointless because it's online. And I don't mean to say that it's not important. I don't mean to say that you shouldn't feel comfortable or happy playing a game. I mean to say that you have the ability to feel comfortable and be happy playing a game. So surround yourself with the people that you want to play the game with. don't worry about the other people, and have fun. And I'm probably not going to play any more of the video because that was only 9 minutes, and I feel like I turned the video even longer. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. Again, I will have a link to the full video in the description. Micah, you were actually, if you end up watching this, you were one of the people that I wanted to have on my podcast. I wouldn't talk about this, but maybe at some point. I appreciate your impression of the community, and I appreciate quite a bit of the Guild Wars 2 content that you've created previously. Most of your other content was also brought to my attention in a different Discord about you being an up-and-coming creator for Guild Wars 2, and I hope that this doesn't steer you away from actually creating content for the game. If it does, that's unfortunate. Or if it just makes you feel better to not, it is what it is. But, yeah. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you at the next one.